For decades in Germany, the politics of the far right has been associated with a terrible chapter in that country's history. But now a new generation of young voters say they're considering voting for the far right party Alternative for Deutschland. So why is the AfD so popular with young Germans? We sent a team onto the campaign trail with them to find out. I'm Geraint Vincent, and this is What You Need to Know. Hello and welcome to this episode of What You Need to Know. Joining me today are ITV News reporter George Hankhorn and producer Sophia Ankel. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
We are used in this country to associating, the stereotype is we associate young people with the politics of the left, of course. That's not what's happening in Germany.
No, it's really interesting. So if we think about the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, predicted to come second in the general election, essentially on Sunday. And interestingly, they're kind of the biggest group for that party are young people. So the Gen Z voters, that's like people under 30, basically. And it's very interesting because there's, I guess, a lot of reasons for that, feeling left behind by politics. Usually people that are younger, maybe a little bit more radical as well. So perhaps voting for something that's brand new. But Germany potentially could be a test case for the rest of Europe and kind of maybe even the UK as well in the next few years of how the sort of populist right rises, really.
And I think Germany is also especially interesting just because of its history, right? Like everyone is saying, oh, you're seeing the shift to the far right in America and in all other parts of Europe. But I think Germany is an interesting case study in itself just because we've spent the last, or it has spent the last, however many years trying to move away from that. And so it's just really interesting to see that come back now, slowly.
Now, you made this brilliant film. Just talk us through where exactly you went and who you met and what you saw.
So it was a busy week, travelling all around Germany, driving all over the place. So we had a few things. We basically met people who were pro-AfD supporters. So we met a rapper who basically raps about some people would say pretty controversial issues. His music's been taken off some streaming services because of the sort of, he talks about migration, he talks about LGBT plus rights in the music as well. We went to an AfD rally, so this was one of the sort of the events leading up to the election, and we met some young people there. We also went to a place called Erfurt, which is in the state of Thuringen, so that's kind of like this hotbed of AfD support, I guess, that kind of surrounds Berlin. And there's a little bit of history in there as well, which kind of makes Erfurt quite an interesting place to visit.
I think East Germany in particular is really interesting because East Germany is the part of Germany that is voting for the AfD. So in the last regional elections, the AfD had their first politician voted in there, and a third of the people who voted for him were young people. And so it was just quite an interesting case study because it's not far from Berlin, but it's in the heartland of the East. And it was there where we spoke to 3 young girls who were all second-generation immigrants, who grew up there, who are from there, and who were feeling increasingly concerned for their safety. And so, that was quite an interesting discussion with them for sure.
And what did they tell you? What, they're scared to go out?
They're afraid to go out. They went out with their family. They're speaking Turkish, and someone used a derogatory term with them. I think it's just a general kind of the way that people are treating them now, which is quite concerning.
And I think a lot of that comes from not just their experiences in real life, but stuff they're seeing on social media. So when we talk about the AfD's success, a lot of it is being driven by TikTok. So they are the newest party in Germany. They were formed in 2013, but they're kind of the oldest hands when it comes to social. So they've been on TikTok longer than any of the other parties. Their videos get 3 times more views than any of the other parties combined. And, these young girls are telling us they're on TikTok, they're using social media, and some of the messaging they're hearing from people on the right, it kind of is quite tough to hear.
Well, let's hear from them. Ellen and Azra, 2 of the second-generation immigrants you were talking about, Sophia. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
I came to Erfurt with my family and we just went shopping and we were talking in Turkish to each other and someone behind us said, Ausländer. And this is something which I still, which is still in my head. I'm not foreign here, even if I maybe look that way.
Right now in the election, we have people on the top who are praising to taking away the citizenship of people. And the last time that we saw it was in 1933.
Now, this may be, I'm completely guessing here, George, but I'm imagining that the young AFD supporters that you spoke to would not describe themselves as racist, and would probably be very worried to hear about the effect that some of the party's slogans are having on people like those people you spoke to.
Yeah, I mean, if you base it on some of the young people we met, some of those young people at the rally we went to in Potsdam, they would say, you know, we have legitimate concerns about migration. They look back to 2015, where, you know, 1 million Syrian refugees were welcomed to Germany, and it was something that was kind of by Angela Merkel that was applauded at the time. They would say, look, you know, we're happy to have people here. We just want people here who are going to, you know, perhaps integrate, or they might say they want people who are going to, I don't know, maybe come and find work and that kind of thing. And I think that's what they would say. You know, these are just concerns that we have, and no, we're not racist. And we're
also, sorry, I should just add to that I think in terms of like a lot of these topics are a taboo in Germany, have been over the last few years. But I think the AFD is kind of opening up this space for people to say these things without fears of, I don't know, repercussion or whatever. Like they are now openly saying those things, even if they're racist or not, and don't feel like it's an issue because the AFD is almost enabling that.
Right, making it okay.
Correct.
And what was your sense, Sophia, of what the kind of structural reasons are for the AFD's appeal to young voters? George mentioned, you know, difficulty with housing and jobs. That was your impression too? Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, the biggest kind of message that they're driving is this anti-immigration message. So even when we're talking about the economy, when we're talking about the housing crisis, everything goes back to immigrants, and it's the immigrants who are causing the housing crisis. It's the immigrants who are causing our economy to fail. You know, so it's that constant connection, and we saw that at a rally that we attended in our last day there, where all young people that we spoke to that evening said immigration was their biggest concern. And then named why, and they were, you know, housing, I can't afford my rent or whatever, but it was immigration that was the main kind of issue that they had.
And it was interesting, actually, if you listen to the way that the young people explained how they were voting, why they were voting for the AFD, a lot of it is essentially like almost regurgitating those messages. You know, you kind of hear the same phrases that the AFD would use in their slick TikTok videos being repeated by young people, and I feel like that. I mean, that's cut through, right? That shows that what they're saying is working.
It's word by word as well, like really. And then you ask and you dig a bit deeper and you go, well, how do you think the AFD is going to solve this problem? And they don't have an answer. It's because they're just getting these kind of one-liners from social media, from TikTok, and they're just repeating them. So that was really interesting. And the concerns about the rise of the AFD, I guess, were echoed beyond people you spoke to, who young people who may have some immigrant heritage. You heard it elsewhere, the people you spoke to.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to one of the people we spoke to was a rapper. So as we talked about, you know, he was rapping about all these sorts of issues in terms of migration and immigration, and he's been a vocal supporter of the party. You had other people, young people who were undecided and, you know, share, maybe not on immigration as such, but share views around like feeling left behind, not be able to get on the housing ladder. But they are voting in a completely different way. So the interesting thing is that although a lot of these young people will share the same sorts of views, it's kind of being represented in very different ways. You know, you might go to the left or to the right, but actually you might kind of meet in the middle on those certain issues. Yeah.
Let's talk about the AFD leader, Alice Weidel. Now, she's an interesting character. A lot of the party's views seem to be quite kind of anti-LGBT. She denies this and is in a same-sex relationship herself with a lady of Sri Lankan heritage, I understand. How do her supporters talk about her life and her setup?
I mean, there's the Alice Weidel cult, which is kind of what we discovered while we were there. So just from being on social media, and you kind of realise that like your For You page starts to get a little bit skewed towards AFD support once you've been looking up these videos. But the way that, you know, like fans of hers basically are creating, you know, like fan videos of her speaking at rallies, or they'll do fun edits and that kind of thing. And she's relatively young. She's in her 40s. She's seen as quite a modern figure, which when you compare her to all the other kind of main leading candidates for chancellor in Germany, she stands out because she's a woman, she's quite young, she is progressive, she is gay herself. But interesting when you press AfD politicians on, they talk a lot about, they predict that they're going to have a lot of gay voters come to the AfD. If you press them on that and say, oh, is that because of your leader? They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be drawn on that and that to be sort of something that they shout about, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
And this is the same for her as well. And she has been asked, in public what she feels about this. And she says, look, it's not something that I think is worth speaking about. I think immigration is worth speaking about. And so she always immediately kind of redirects that and just doesn't make it a thing.
Bats it away.
Exactly, yeah.
And she lives in Switzerland as well.
She lives in Switzerland.
Another contradiction.
Yeah. She's just, she is an interesting character. She is different. She now actually just yesterday became the most followed German politician on X.
Right.
So whatever it is, it's working. And I do also have to say, listening to her speak, she's very good at speaking. And there were moments where it's just that real people talk that I think the AfD does very, very well. It's not some politician that's just saying big fancy words. She kind of just cuts straight to it.
Right.
And that's really appealing.
George mentioned the word fun when he was talking about the social media approach, the AfD. It did strike me when I was watching the rally in particular. There wasn't an angry event as far as I could tell. The vibe was it wasn't furious and kind of people shouting. There was a kind of almost party atmosphere at that, and a kind of friendly, welcoming kind of vibe, festival sort of thing.
Look, I'll admit, I've not been to many AfD rallies myself.
Me neither.
But it was quite bizarre for a political event, I guess, because it was a party. There were counter protesters who were there, and there was a lot of noise from that. But moving away and inside these big tents, there was songs about Alice Weidel, there were songs about the AfD, there were songs about family values. They had basically an MC who was there all night, a rapper basically, who was holding the whole night together. It was kind of surreal to see. It's not what you expect. And then you kind of look at, say, political events here, and it feels so distant. It feels quite weird.
It was really odd because we kind of expected it to be this, it was held on this big square in Potsdam, and we expected this to be an open rally with loads of people kind of marching and whatnot, but it was very closed off.
Right.
It was encircled by police vans, 2 barriers. Getting in, it took us, I think we had to go through 3 kind of security levels to get in. And then on the other side, you had the anti-AfD demonstrators, the Antifa, who were shouting things. But it was just, considering it's polling as the second biggest party right now in Germany, I just expected it to be a lot bigger. And I don't know if it's a safety concern or if it's because, the tensions between both sides are so high, but it was just in this little bubble.
Okay.
And that was quite striking.
The bubble has a lot of appeal internationally by the looks of things over the past couple of weeks. We saw in Munich at the security conference JD Vance singing the praises of the AfD. I think he met with Ms. Weidel, didn't he? Elon Musk has reached out on multiple platforms to the AfD. How significant do you think that is in terms of, I guess, in the first place, support for the party in Germany itself?
Look, Elon Musk, anyone that's maybe on the up, I think Elon Musk is kind of enjoying being a little bit part of.
Too.
He did a thing on Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, where he did kind of an interview with Alice Weidel. The thing you notice from that is he doesn't know an awful lot about German politics, but he likes to kind of support the AfD, and he kind of sees them as that sort of, I guess, that populist party,
insurgent,
kind of on the rise, insurgent, exactly, and also big on social media, and that's kind of his bag. He owns X, he wants to kind of be a part of that. But it's interesting that he came out at one of their rallies virtually, and I think they're probably quite enjoying having the support of someone like Elon Musk. He's kind of that disruptor, isn't he?
Yeah, for sure. Although I will say that after he had that chat with Alice Weidel, all the papers covered it, and it was mainly negative.
Oh, was it?
Press, right and left wing papers, which was quite interesting.
Okay.
It's working on social media, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Just looking ahead very quickly to the election, which is this weekend on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen polls that project an AfD vote of 25% maybe. If they're that big a party in the Bundestag, that changes everything, doesn't it, in terms of the German political process? There's always been the firewall, that, I don't know what the word is in German.
The Brandmauer.
Okay. Which has stopped the conventional parties from ever working with parties from the far right. Does that change after this weekend? Or
It doesn't change. Okay. Well, I think, there are already ideas of what the coalition will be, and it will not include the AfD.
Right.
However, I do think there will be scenarios probably in the near future where they will be relying on an AfD vote to pass certain
like in particular instances.
Correct. And so then it'll be interesting to see, because Friedrich Merz, who's expected to become the next chancellor, has already kind of done that and actually received a lot of criticism for it just 2 weeks ago. And yeah, so they will have to depend on them in some form, but there will not be an AfD coalition.
On paper, they say, all the other parties would say, yeah, we're not going to have anything to do with the AfD. But when you have a party that has, is almost so popular amongst these young voters and is kind of on the up, it would be hard to completely ignore them and pretend that they weren't there. So I imagine, over time, something may have to give.
Well, absolutely fascinating talking to both of you. Thank you both very much. And thank you for listening. You can read more about this story on our website and watch George and Sophia's full documentary on ITVX. And for more on a range of issues, do check out our back catalogue wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.